Welcome back or welcome to Grateful and Full of Greatness. I'm your host, Mark Lassini. On this podcast, I sit down with guests who, in my opinion, live their lives with the pursuit of greatness in mind. This platform allows me to discuss and to explain strategies that go into reaching peak performance. This is episode 39. My guest is Wes Barnett, champion at every level. Wes was a two-time Olympic weightlifter for Team USA, competing in Barcelona 1992 and Atlanta 1996. He won medals at World Championships, the Pan Am Games, and collegiately. He was national champion in 1990 in the 90 kg weight class. From athlete to administrator, Wes worked in the Sport Partnership Division of United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, as well as the CEO of USA Weightlifting. Now, Wes is Vice President of Business Development for Thorne Health Tech, a science-driven wellness company that provides the highest quality supplements and solutions on the planet. As an ambassador of Thorne, I can speak candidly to Wes's deep levels of experience, expertise, knowledge, authenticity, and integrity. My intention with this episode is to hear about Wes's journey in greater detail, to see how his athletic experience translated into more than just a career, and to share with listeners our joint belief in the power of true well-being. Wes, thank you so much for carving out the time.
Mark, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I usually start with chapters 1 and 2 of a person's life, the upbringing, the early childhood impacts. But with you, I want to be a little bit different. I want to jump into kind of a pressure moment, the high pressure moments you experienced at the Olympic level. I think that's really engaging. And as I was preparing for this, I wanted to start there. So many can only dream of the micro experiences you had at the world stage. So when you reflect, what are the thoughts or the images that come to mind during those intense moments leading up to or inside a heavy lift?
Oh gosh, well, it's really interesting because everybody approaches this a little bit differently. Everybody has different experiences, but for me, it was really about just kind of going out and trying to replicate what you've done in training. That whole kind of 10,000 hour rule, I think, is really relevant because these are things that you do tens, if not hundreds of thousands of times over and over and over again. And really the unique thing about weightlifting and also the frustrating thing about Olympic weightlifting is there's really no cross training that you can do. So you have to do the lifts again and again and again. And why I say that's a little bit frustrating is because there is no sort of cross training. Some of the injuries that you get are overuse injuries and the tendonitis and just those kind of strains and things of that nature that it puts on your body. It's pretty taxing, but by the time you get to the big stage, I mean, you have done these lifts so many times. And what you do is you just try to put yourself in a mindset that this is no different than training. This is no different than a national competition, even though you are on the world stage and you have the eyes of the planet really focused on you, which is a little bit nerve-wracking. But if you can just kind of go in with that same mindset, and that's what I always try to do, that this is old hat. You've done this a million times. You're just in a different place. You're on a different stage, but that doesn't change the fact that you've put in the work and you have the confidence to go out there and really make something special happen. So it's really a lot of mindset and self-coaching and self-talk about being in a familiar place and just kind of doing what you've been trained to do.
I was hoping we would go there in terms of the mindset. What it comes to mind for me is there's this cool less than 5-minute video that I share often of a U.S. astronaut by the name of Chris Hadfield. He talks about how to cope with stress. And he says at launch, you don't picture an astronaut crossing their fingers and closing their eyes, hoping that everything goes well. And they're not, because the best way to become more confident at something is to focus on your competence, your readiness, and your preparation. Right, which I believe his main ethos at the end of it is just stressing that if you can increase your readiness, then you will be more confident. Along that same thread, many business professionals and professional athletes prepare for weeks and months for a presentation or an event. But for you as an Olympian, it's years. And you talked about the overtraining that could potentially happen. So how were you able to embrace those moments and those opportunities when they finally came rather than be overwhelmed by them, right? You talked about the eyes on you or be hesitant or be negatively affected. So how did you embrace it rather than, I guess, fail under pressure?
Yeah, it really comes down to practice, and what I mean by that is, um, it wasn't like I trained and then all of a sudden was on the Olympic stage. So throughout my career, starting at the national level, um, you're on that stage and all eyes are on you. And the beauty about weightlifting, um, more so than being an astronaut or even competing in a team sport, is you are in control, right? So you have the ability to basically control your destiny. And I really love what you said about, the higher degree of preparation you have, the more confidence you have. And that's exactly true, because going into these competitions, when I felt that my training cycle was great, I stayed healthy during the entire training cycle, then I can go onto the platform with a lot of confidence that, yeah, I've got this because my preparation was flawless. And now it's just here up to me, because we have a saying in weightlifting that the barbell yields only to the strong and brave and never forgives weakness. So what I
Love
mean
that.
by that is, if you've got 200 kilos on the bar doesn't care if you've got the flu, how well you slept, what your preparation is. It's still going to be 200 kilos. So it's up to you to kind of prepare yourself and give yourself that confidence to go out there and handle your business. So again, me going into this, I had lots of preparation from the national level to the international level in my years leading up there. So with national championships, with junior world championships, with world championships, with Pan American Games, you practice your craft, and you learn the lessons from being on those stages. So hopefully you'll have your failures at those levels, and then at your biggest moment, you've taken your learnings from those failures, from those mistakes, and you can put all of that together to have a great performance when you're at the highest level, when you're on the biggest stage, when it's the most important, because you have that day and that's it. So you want to talk about pressure. There is no best of 7 series. There is no 3 out of 5. There is no tomorrow. You compete that day and you've got this 2-hour window. No matter how you feel, how you slept, or what's going on, that's it. And if you don't perform on that day, then you've got 4 years that you have to wait,
Mm.
not before you can try again, but before you can even attempt to try to make the team to then
Mm.
be in a position to try again. So it's imperative that you take those learnings, those lessons, implement those in such a way that helps you grow as a person, helps you grow as a competitor, so that when those critical moments come, you are ready to go. And it's funny, I volunteer for for an organization called the First Tee, and I had this little girl come up to me. I was volunteering, just last week actually, and she says, "You know what? I never lose." And I said, "What?" She goes, "I never lose." I said, "What do you mean by that?" She goes, "I either win or I learn." And
Mm.
I'm like, wow, how insightful. This girl's like 7 years old. And this is her attitude. And I was like, wow, that is pretty powerful. And when you think about it and break that down, that is the perfect strategy. Don't take losing as a failure, or losing, isn't even it's a learning opportunity. It's not a failure. So you either win or you learn.
Mm.
And I thought that was pretty insightful. And when I look back over my career, I think without even kind of having that kind of philosophy, but that's exactly what you have to live by. Get over those failures, those things that are maybe setbacks. you learn from them so that you're better next time.
I think the idea that's coming to mind is the idea of just reframing pressure, reframing the losses, and what's been told to me by an applied sports psychology mentor. I guess two things is, well, winners lose more than losers lose, and a winner is somebody who's just lost and tried one more time. So I really love the idea of taking failures, and that kind of adds to the preparation from the first question we were talking about. Uh, a few ideas, and I'm going to look to keep them as concise as possible. Is there's a really great Henry Rollins quote about weightlifting that I followed for many times. You can go outside and be called all sorts of names, but 200 pounds will always be 200 pounds. I love that idea. And then there's this article written by the New York Times, I believe, and it was called The Zen of Weightlifting. And the whole idea of it was autonomy, belonging, and mastery when it comes to weightlifting, because there's a consistency aspect about it, right? And I really want to go along the autonomy part about it, because I do really see the differentiation in sport, right? I read Andre Agassi's book called Open, and he referred to tennis as being alone on an island. Well, golf is like that, gymnastics is like that, and certainly weightlifting. So like when I play lacrosse, it's we all oftentimes say it's connected, help defense, and there's offense and all that, and you have your teammates. So it's not just you, but that's not how it is. So how does that resonate with you, and how do you feel about your sport being just you and you versus the weight on the bar?
Well, for me, it's something that I really enjoy because and I'll give this example. So my daughter does gymnastics now, and I sit in the crowd with an upset stomach, a headache. I'm sweating, I'm pacing because I'm not in control. And when you're in an individual sport, yeah, that autonomy is there. Even though, look, you've got coaches and teammates that help you, kind of get there, right? So you don't do anything alone. But when you're on that platform, it is you and only you, and there's nobody there at that moment that can help you out. So it's imperative for you. And what I really love about it is I've got nobody to blame. No, there's no fingers to point. It's like if I do great, I'm going to take credit for it. And if I do poorly, then I'm going to take the blame for it. And for me, I have more confidence in myself than I do kind of anybody else. So I always, kind of welcomed that, because I had so much confidence in my ability to do the things that I needed to do, that I kind of cherished and really flourished in that type of environment where when the chips are stacked against you, it's you and only you that needs to find a way out. And that's the beauty about weightlifting. It's you against the bar. And as I mentioned earlier, the bar, whatever the weight is, that's what the weight is, and doesn't care how you've prepared or anything like that. So it's always great to have that challenge where it's me against the iron, so to speak. And I'm happy to say that most of the time I won. And and I really do I think thrive in that sort of environment where I've got me to depend on, because I always had that confidence that I was going to get the job done.
And I just think there's just about all sport, but specifically in this weightlifting, right? This idea, the metaphor to life, and both being a continuous series of problem-solving events, and how are you going to use what you've learned in weightlifting to translate it over to being a better role in all your play, whether it's a father and person. So was it always weightlifting for you, Wes, or did you play other sports? And when did weightlifting become your main focus?
Yeah, so I played all sports growing up, the typical baseball, basketball, football. I stopped playing football as a sophomore in high school. So my brother, he was doing weightlifting as well, and he was a football player, and he broke his wrist. And then all of a sudden, when it came time to do clean and jerks after he healed up, he didn't have that wrist mobility or flexibility anymore, which really stifled his Olympic lifting career. I'm like, boy, I don't want that to happen to me. So, I started kind of getting a little bit fearful of injuries. So I'm like, I'm going to move away from football. And then it just became too much, in high school, because I started weightlifting at 12 years old. And once you got into high school, it became too much to try to do baseball, basketball, football, and weightlifting, because weightlifting, there is no off season. It's a year round thing. And what I found myself doing was I would stop lifting for whatever season I was in, and then when I resumed lifting again, I was basically like starting all over. So I'd go to like the junior national championships, and I'd get destroyed year after year after year, because I didn't have that kind of full year training. It was like, hey, I had this season, and I had, just a couple of months to kind of get ready for, the junior nationals. And, when you're competing against others who this is all they do, and all they have been doing, you put yourself at a little bit of a disadvantage. But I knew very young, and my coaches helped guide me as well, that, the junior level of competition, it's important, but it's not that critical. It's just, it's the starting point. It's really when you kind of get up into those senior level age groups and competitions, that's really where it counts. So I continued playing basketball all through high school. I was actually an all-state basketball player as well. But after high school was over, I mean, I graduated at 5'10", 175 pounds. So in high school, you can get away with, I jumped center. I played power forward. And after after my high school basketball was over, and I'm in my senior year there, I'm looking and I'm like, well, there's not a whole lot of opportunity and demand for a 5'10" collegiate power forward, and I couldn't dribble well enough to be, a guard, a point guard, or shoot well enough to be a shooting guard. I made my money, kind of down in the paint, but you're in the land of giants down there.
Sure.
So it was a very natural transition that, you gravitate to the things that you're good at. And at that point, I was a much better weightlifter than I was a basketball player, all things considered. And that was the trajectory that I chose to follow.
Outstanding. One of the ideas that comes to me, and I'm reminded of the times where, whether when I had surgery in high school, or when I was inactive, the kind of atrophy that happened to my muscles, and having to, it's crazy what you lose so quickly. So it resonates with me when you kind of change seasons, and then you feel like you're starting back at square one. I really wish that was more understood by the masses. This kind of, yes, there's something to be fearful about trying something, but I think making inaction a little bit more costly, because I think the consistency behind your training is allowed your trajectory to continue to uptick once you made it a 4-season sport. You brought up the fact that you still had teammates, you still had coaches. I'm a strict believer that a great coach can help an individual team to reach great heights, but also a bad coach can hurt one's development and limit potential. So my question to you, you started at 12 years old weightlifting. Who would you point to as the most influential figures and coaches in your weightlifting career?
So, I have been, very, very blessed throughout my career, even, starting at 12 years old. So I was at a youth center. I spent all my time at this youth center that was, probably about 3 or 4 blocks from my house. So it was an easy walk or bike ride there. And, I just spent so much time there as a youth. But the youth director, a guy named Dennis Sneven, he did everything. He was the youth director. He was, track coach, weightlifting coach, basketball. I mean, he just did it all. And he was the one who, kind of initially got me involved in the sport. And he really, at that point in time, hadn't been coaching weightlifting very long. So it was one of those things where we kind of learned and we grew together. And then I went from there to Overland Park, Kansas, to a junior college there, Johnson County community college, and I went there because there was a coach named Steve Javorek, who was there as their kind of strength and conditioning coach, but he had a weightlifting background and was coaching at the time the athletic director's son. So he started a little team there, and my coach Dennis said, "Hey, we've got to go down here because Steve is he's this Eastern European coach. Eastern Europeans, they get degrees in coaching, so they really know their stuff." So went down there and worked with him for a couple of years, and then got invited to the Olympic Training Center, where I worked with Dragomir Charleslan, which coincidentally, when Dragomir was a child, his first coach was Steve Javorek.
Oh my gosh.
So when Steve immigrated to the United States, he kind of went to work at that collegiate level, and then Dragomir came in the early '90s to the United States, and became the resident coach. I think came specifically for that reason. So there was this connection, and what was really great about it with Dennis and with Steve, it wasn't about, let's see how much weight you can lift as fast as we can get you to lift it. Their egos were taken out of it. It was more about long-term athlete development. It was all about the end game, right? Where do we want to get you to? And I mentioned that because what they helped provide was this foundation, this phenomenal foundation. Because people can look and they say, "Oh gosh, you lifted so much weight." Yeah, but I didn't start there, right? I started at the broomstick just like everybody else did. But it was years and years and years of that foundational work that positioned me to really have this kind of launching point when I went to the Olympic Training Center. Because when I got there with Dragomir, it was all about, okay, we've got to get the poundages up. It's about putting people through the meat grinder and seeing who could survive. And if you could survive, chances were you were going to have success. But I had so many teammates over those years at the Olympic Training Center that did not make it. And I think due in large part, maybe some genetics played a role. But I think in large part, they weren't fortunate enough to have the foundation that I had that prepared my body to handle the workload that I was under when I was out at the training center. So when you go from training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday once a day to training Monday through Saturday twice a day, the volume increase is astronomical. And your body at first is like, whoa, what is going on here? And I had so many, like I said, teammates who just could not handle that workload, could not handle that volume. And there was this kind of revolving door for a while. But I was able to sustain the workload, and actually really my improvement just kind of skyrocketed. And it was because, without a doubt, the foundation that I had laid, because I had coaches who cared about me as an athlete more than they cared about their own ego and like, well, look what I've produced and look what teams he's made and look at me. I'm the person responsible for all that. It was always about laying that foundation so that I could have a long, successful career versus a very short, kind of blip on the radar that, oh, he's here today and then gone tomorrow. So I was just blessed with having people in my life that cared about my long-term development versus short-term success.
Absolutely love it. I mean, it's remarkable. And one of the things inside of mental performance that I bring up is a term called psychological architecture. So in the same way you build a house or you build a home or you build a big building, the foundational elements are so key when it comes to your psychology and understanding the fundamentals before the top layer nuances and tips. So I really like that idea, and I love the emphasis on foundation because, you know, one of the most famous quotes by Lionel Messi, one of the best soccer players of all time, is, "It took me 18 years to become an overnight success." And I love that because there's this repetitive nature of just laying the groundwork and cement and driving pillars down and way before the roof and all the flair, I guess you can put it at. And you said something really key that I think is important for me to talk about. There's a guy named Bob Townsend. He wrote a book called Up the Organization. He started Avis Rent-A-Car, and it's an amazing book. But he had such an influence on an executive at Avis by the name of Bob Davids. That Bob Davids went on and did a TED Talk, and he talks about leadership without ego. And he does this really cool metaphor where he says, "Well, here's a chain," and he really has this this plastic chain with him, and the question is, what happens to this chain if I push it? And the answer is, we really don't know. But what happens to the chain if I pull it? Well, you're followed then. And I love that metaphor in terms of leadership without ego, because leaders push, they don't pull. And that's what you were saying, right? They didn't push you to lift as much as possible right from the start. They pulled you to be a long-term athlete. And that's a really, really big key in terms of coaching, right? That just because everything in you, the human being aspect of it, you want it right now. You want Wes to be great right now and live so much right now. So going along that thread of the shortcut and people want better performance right now. When you think about your decades of competition, you talked about foundation, but what tangibles and intangibles really stick out as the ones you had to rely upon to go from above average to really good at the craft to great and then to an Olympian?
Yeah, and I will say too that because we mentioned these kind of short-term gains, and it's not only the coaches, but it's a lot of the athletes as well. Everybody wants success right now, right? And nobody is willing to, shouldn't say nobody, many are called, but few are chosen, right? And it's because, in my opinion, people aren't willing to put in the grind. They're not willing to put in the work doing the basics. I think if you do the basics really, really well, the rest takes care of itself. But how many people are willing to spend the time, first of all, losing, right? Or should we say learning, right? People don't realize this. I went to 3 Pan American Games, 2 Olympic Games, 7 or 8 World Championships. I won exactly 1 National Junior Championship. 1. And when people hear that, they're like, that's unbelievable, because I was willing to kind of stick it through and take my lumps along the way. And that leads me to answering the question, that you just asked. It's like, you just kind of never give up. You've got to be able to take the good with the bad. And, I grew up in a neighborhood where my brother was 2 years older than me, and most of the people in our neighborhood were 2 and 3 and 4 years older than me. So he hung out with those kids. I had no option but to hang out with those kids. So when we played sports, I was always in this situation where they didn't want, the little brother around, right? So when we played tackle football, out on the school ground, no pads, of course. We're just, these are just kids in the neighborhood. Guess who they always wanted to destroy? Well, me. Because they didn't want me there anyways, because I was like one of those gnats, right? Always around and just annoying, but I wanted to play and I wanted to be with them. So I had to be, faster, quicker, more intuitive, tougher in some respects, because, when they laid it on you, I mean, you couldn't lay on the ground and cry. you just had to take your licks. You had to get up and keep playing on. So every kind of unofficial sport that I played, at the school ground or with the neighborhood kids, I was always the young kid. So I always had to, either up my game or just do enough where I could hold my own, which helped me when I then went down and I played kids my own age. Then, they got all of that frustration and wrath that I couldn't put on the kids that were older than me, but I certainly could put it on kids that were my age. So throughout my career, it was always about kind of proving that I belong. That was the thing for me, proving that I was supposed to be there. And that's something that, I grew up South St. Joseph, Missouri. We had, 86,000 people, and the South Side is one of the poor sides of town. I mean, the youth center that I went to, most of the kids that went there, they were able to access the community center for free because it was, income based. So if you couldn't afford to pay, you got in for free. I think my fee every time I went was a quarter, 25 cents every time I went in. So whenever you kind of got put in a stage where, maybe you were competing against people that had more opportunities than you did, you always had to, at least I felt this way, I always had to prove that I belong there. And how better to do that than through your performance. So I always had that in the back of my mind, that I'm not only representing myself, but I'm representing my neighborhood, I'm representing my community, I'm representing my family, I'm representing, every little kid who starts in the same position that I am. That was who I was representing. And if I could do that and prove to everybody that doesn't matter where you come from, what your beginnings are, that doesn't mean that's where you have to stay, right? That your lot in life isn't dictated to who your parents were, how much money you have, or the neighborhood that you grew up in. And that was always something that was important to me, to kind of represent all of those elements. And I was just fortunate enough to be able to do that, at the world stage, and do that at a level that really nobody in my community had ever seen before, had ever done that before. So that was one of my real motivating factors, and one of the things that continued to drive me from the beginning, then to my collegiate years, and then to eventually the national team for USA weightlifting. That was my drive.
Mm. And higher performance comes from higher purpose. And when you say things like representing all those people, right, I think there's something really special to be taken away from that, right? Because you're not just doing it for yourself. You did use diction that you're proving that you belong, right? But there was also a higher purpose there, right? That they were representing much more than just yourself. Something that many of my clients know is my favorite word in the world is momentum. Because I believe a wave doesn't crash where it starts. And if you focus on incremental improvement compared to who you were yesterday, there won't be a comparative conversation years from now. And it's just absolutely amazing that there was only one junior championship under your belt, and then you have all the success later. But that goes back to the momentum, the continuous improvement. And I keep relating to you in a lot of ways because I remember being a young boy and the house getting phoned, and Mario, who was a few blocks over, 4 years my elder, needed a fifth for basketball, right? And I was young enough to go over there, and the kind of the strategy and the intuitiveness, the faster finding a way to not get punished when you're out there playing games with the older boys. I think that's a really big topic. One thing I want to bring up is modeling. So something that I repeat often to younger and aspiring student athletes is emulate until you can innovate. It is supposed to emphasize the importance of following the footsteps of exceptional performers that came before you. So you've mentioned the boys you played with growing up. You've mentioned some of these coaches that you had, but outside of those who had direct personal impact on your evolution, who were some role models you looked up to as a kid or a teenager, and why?
Well, it's an interesting question, and hopefully this answer doesn't sound arrogant, but I really, as a kid, I really didn't have any role models. I mean, especially in the sport of weightlifting, that was so new. I didn't even know anything about the sport. I didn't even know that there was such a thing called the Olympic Games, not until kind of much later, after I started. Of course, those that you see on TV, because I did love basketball, and watching Dr. J and Moses Malone, the 76ers. I just really enjoyed them, growing up, even though I'm sitting in South St. Joe, Missouri. And we had our own, kind of basketball team there, the Kansas City Kings, which are now, in Sacramento. But I didn't watch a lot of TV. I was always out playing, always out doing something. So I didn't have a lot of people that I looked up to, or I aspired to be, just because I just didn't know of them. I just knew that I just enjoyed playing, and enjoyed participating in sports, and I would just go out and do the best I can. So even if I'm playing little league baseball, I didn't know about Reggie Jackson and Babe Ruth, and I just didn't know about any of those, because I was, I guess, kind of consumed in my own world. But then as I got older, certainly you recognize those that came before you that provide the opportunities. But what I always tried to do, and I think it was Dragomir that maybe instilled this in me. So two things he said to me. He's like, always hold yourself to a higher standard than anyone else expects of you. And that always resonated with me. And I still carry that with me today, to try to do better, be better than anybody expects of you. And I think if people kind of carry that mantra along with them, it'll bring a lot of success with it. But the other thing that he said is, you don't want to walk in anybody else's footsteps. What you want to do is create your own footsteps that inspire other people to walk in. So that's what I always try to do, lay down new ground, be the pioneer, be the one that's out front. We talk about, Frost and his, do you take this path, or do you take that path, the path most traveled or less traveled? And I, in my mind, like to take the path that hasn't been traveled at all. I like to be a trailblazer and set a new path, and then instead of following in someone else's footsteps. And there's nothing wrong with trying to kind of emulate others and have the success that they have. But I always encourage people, make your own footprints, set your own path, and inspire others to want to do the same. And that's just kind of how I've lived my life, and has been my philosophy for quite a long time.
Love it. And perhaps I'll tighten the screws on the emulate until you can innovate, in terms of, stealing the intangibles that others have, not necessarily the tangible footsteps, but
Sure.
the intangibles. And from what I read and study and hear about the transition away from high level sports and short-term careers like military and full-time parenting, to when the children leave home like a bird leaves its nest, it's not always easy, and it's often extremely difficult. You talked about the natural transition you had from basketball into weightlifting, but I want to ask you about the transition from athlete to administrator, and from sports moving on. How was that transition for you? Were there main obstacles that you really had to battle through as you walked away from the platform?
Well, the first main obstacle was, I used to train twice a day, right? So you'd have your morning session, you'd go and take a nap in the afternoon, and then, you'd come back for your evening session. So when I first started working, um, around that afternoon time, I was not used to,
Mm,
an 8 to 5, kind of gig. So my ability to even stay awake during the afternoon, it took me about 3 months before,
mm,
I could actually kind of feel good, throughout the day. So, honestly speaking, that was the biggest transition, is just, kind of my body's clock, and adjusting to a new routine, a new schedule. Once
mm,
we got that mastered, um, I learned very quickly that all the things that made me successful as an athlete were going to help make me successful as an administrator.
mm,
All of the elements, and it sounds a little cliche when you talk about it, but it's absolutely true. When you talk about, goal setting, when you talk about, teamwork, when you talk about, just kind of never giving up, those kind of, characteristics that go into, making you a successful athlete, it's the same thing in the work world. And one of the things that I felt that I brought to the table was this spirit of competitiveness.
mm,
Not where I'm trying to step on or step over people, to get anything, done, or to move up, sort of the hierarchy, so to speak. But it was really about, a standard of excellence, right? Holding yourself to that higher standard, than anyone else expects of you. So when I would come in, and there was a project to be done, I wanted to get it done first. I wanted
mm,
to have it done better. I wanted to be called out for the quality of work. And what that did was, for everyone around me, they're like, okay, here's Wes over here. We know that he's going to try to get it done first. So now, let us try to get it done before him. Let us try to get the praise, that he's seeking as well. So it's able to kind of lift everyone around you up,
mm,
for a better result. And it really, I think, enhances the culture. It enhances the environment, of your coworkers, and thus contributes to the overall success, of the organization that you're working for, because you bring this, very positive, level of competitiveness into the picture. But these were all the things that I learned for years, and skills that I developed and honed, and in some cases perfected for years as an athlete. So it really made the transition from athlete to administrator very, very easy, because I was just doing the exact same things, that I learned to do as an athlete. Now I'm just pushing around papers instead of pushing around weight.
so what's really cool about that is, um, in psychology, there's a guy named John Piaget who talks about, and did a lot of work on, um, what goes inside of a quality game. And it's a good mix of competition and cooperation, right? So even when you're watching an NBA basketball game, there's not one of the 10 players in the corner playing archery. He's cooperating, he's playing basketball, right? And one of the cool things about that idea is the yin yang aspect of it. The six human needs are certainty and uncertainty. So we need the certainty that the roof's not going to come down on our head, or we wouldn't have this conversation. But we also need the uncertainty of what we might talk about. The next two is significance and love, right? So violence will always be around, because if someone holds a gun to your head, they're instantly significant to you, right? For whatever reason. And then the other one is love and connection, right? We need that as humans. And then the last two are growth and contribution, which I really think hit home with what you're talking about, kind of the individual growth, right? The uplifting that Wes was doing to contribute to the overall culture. And I really think there's a balance between both, right? And you need both. Even when you were saying earlier that word prove, I need to prove to myself, I need to prove to other people. One thing I talk about in a lot of sessions is we should focus on improve rather than prove, because proving leads to higher amounts of internal pressure. But perhaps you need both, right? You
Mm-hmm.
need that kind of both elements. So Now that you've built an excellent career and sustained a meaningful profession after weightlifting, what would you say is the same versus what is different about Wes Barnett compared to back then?
Yeah, I think and I want to comment, really quick on the other on the last question, because you go into this competitiveness, but not in a detrimental way, right? So you
Mm,
recognize that the strength of the individual, and the strength of the team contributes to the overall success. So, when you have that competitiveness, that's not meant to say that if you found a new way and an improved way of doing something, that you don't share that with your teammates. What you do is you try to kind of help others along as well, because you know that it's like a wolf pack, right?
mm,
The strength of the pack. So I understood that. Yeah, I really like to compete. I really like to win. I really like to be first, but I also don't want it to be easy for me. So if I can help others, and teach others some of the things that I'm doing, now all of a sudden they're in a position where they can push me even further, right?
mm,
So I really love what you said, the push and pull. They can inspire me to be better. So you're not resting on your laurels, because
mm,
you know that you are, kind of helping others get to that level. And as their levels improve and get higher, then now you've got to take yours to the next level. So, that whole competitiveness, it's not it's not meant to kind of keep others down or keep things from them, or you know you're supposed to be sharing. And there's an interesting story, and it's called, and you've probably heard about this African term called Ubuntu, right? So I am successful because we are successful.
mm,
And the story goes that um, there was one of these individuals out there, who spent some time with this tribe in Africa, and um, going around, and he was collecting all of this delicious fruit. And at the end of his time there, he had this big basket of fruit. And what he was going to do is have a race, and whoever won the race, they were going to get this big basket of fruit. Which, yeah, it's important, and it's something that everybody really wanted. So he lines the kids up. He has the finish line, and when he says go, much to his surprise, all the kids joined arms and they ran together. So they all got to the finish line at the same time, so they could all share in the basket of fruit. And he's just like, well, why would you do that? And they're like, well, what good is it for me to be happy if everybody else is sad? Isn't it better that we're all happy? So that's kind of the mentality and the approach that I took, with my colleagues, with my teammates. It's like, I'll be successful if we're all successful. And so I don't want people to misrepresent the word competitiveness, because that is the kind of construct that I'm talking about it. So to your question about what's different now than before, I don't think a lot has changed with me. I think I pride myself on still being the same person that I was, very approachable. I still have a competitive spirit, a competitive fire. I just channel that now through the administrative duties that I have, and with the people and companies that I interact with, and try to bring that to them as well, to kind of raise them up. But I still just am the same person, and I hope I never change. I hope that I can always kind of be the individual, and it's that I was raised to be. And one of my high school kids that I went to high school with, we were talking on text the other day, and this is obviously now, what, almost, good Lord, too many years ago to even count. But he's just like, that's the thing. Whenever you come back home with all the success that you've had, the things that you've done, all over the world, that you've been, and the things that you've accomplished, you've always come back, and you've just always been the same person. And
Mm,
for me, that makes me feel really, really good, because, some people change, but you've got to remember your roots. You remember where you came from, and just continue to be, I'm the same person around you, as I would be around the president of the United States. There is no change. It's just who I am. And for him to make that comment, I was like, wow, that really meant a lot, to me, because, I always, wanted to stay and kind of be the same person, to be humble, to be friendly, to kind of treat everybody with respect. And, I think that I have, done a pretty good job of remaining true to that, and true to who I am. And, it gets confirmed every once in a while when, somebody who you went to high school with makes that comment about you. So, I hope I never change, and, I continue being the person that I was, at 60, as I was, at 6.
and I'll echo that. Integrity is the word that came to mind as I was researching and preparing for the episode with you. What I really admired, and that you stated to me, is as to what you're most proud of, is how you, quote, did things the right way. In a sport like weightlifting that's, riddled with prohibited drug use, it was important to you that when you finished competing, that you could look anyone else in the eye and honestly say that you did it through hard work and not cheating. So I think there's every day there's these temptations, but especially in that kind of highly competitive environment where it's winner take all. The question I have for you inside of that is, how are you able to hold fast and stay true to your core principles and values amidst that extreme temptation?
Yeah, I think it's the people that were in my life. The way that I was brought up. Dennis, my first coach, Dennis Sneeden. I think it's just kind of how you, were brought up, right? And, it's it's really interesting for me because, um, I don't want to be a hypocrite, right? I don't say one thing and do another. So I always go back to St. Joe, Missouri, and when I am in front of small kids or kids that are in the weightlifting program, and I'm talking to them, talking with them, um, being able to look at them and say, you know what, when I was your age, I was I was no different than you are,
Mm.
no different than you are sitting right there. I didn't have any special qualities, special talent. I mean, people would look at me. Look, Mark, when I went to my first Junior Olympics, I was 5'2", 99 pounds, skin and bones. I had more hair than anything else. And, to let these kids know and be able to look them in the eye and say, look, um, I was just like you. And what that means is that if you can put in the hard work, um, I believe that I'm a big believer, and I think it was Ben Franklin that said this, big believer in luck, right? The harder you work, the more luck that you have.
Mm.
I have been so blessed in my life to have people around me that have, supported me, and I've had opportunities, and I recognize that I've had opportunities that others don't have. But I believe a lot of those opportunities were created by the work and the time and the energy and the effort that I put into things. So being able to sit down and look at kids, look them right in the eye and tell them that, yeah, if you work hard, these opportunities will come, and they do come. And I'm living proof of that.
Mm.
And I don't want to be a hypocrite to say, yeah, I was over here doing all kinds of, illegal bad things to get
Sure.
to where I was. I can look my family in the eye. I can look these little kids in the eyes. I can look my coaches in the eyes, and really let them know that there is a possibility for you to get from where you're at to where you want to be and have the success that you want by doing things the right way, by putting in the work, by creating those opportunities for yourself. But then you also have to surround yourself with good people, right? There's a saying that says, show me your 5 friends and I'll show you your future. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. So if you want to run around with an unsavory crowd, I mean, your future is already predetermined. But if you surround yourself with people that you want to be like, or people that you want to emulate, as you mentioned earlier, or people who have had success, the more that you surround yourself with those type of people, the higher likelihood you have to enjoy the success that you're looking for by putting in the work as well. But the opportunities come as a result of the work that you're putting in.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. On the harder you work, the luckier you get, in terms of doing things the right way, and your passion that's coming through. I first started using Thorne supplements when I was introduced to our mutual friend and my sports science coach for Yale lacrosse, Thomas Newman. And then since college and now 7 years into pro lacrosse, Thorne continues to help me feel at my best physically and also mentally and emotionally as well. Right. And then meeting you several months ago, this is kind of just like the same kind of conversations we've always had. It's just now recorded. It's obvious how much you believe in the products and that Thorne does things the right way. So diving into the work that you do now, when did you start at Thorne, and why do you seem to have so much passion for it?
So I started at Thorne in October of 2016, and really came across the company quite by accident. I was looking for a solution for athletes who were testing positive due to contaminated supplements, because the supplement space, it is shady at best, and it's an environment that many people aren't informed on. They're not educated on, and there's an instance where marketing really triumphs science, and what I mean by that is the products that are out there that are not, there's no science behind the products themselves, the ingredients, the formulations, or whatnot, but they've got great labels and spokespeople, and they run commercials, and they say all sorts of things. Marketing just triumphs science, and
Sure.
what I was looking for the athletes was something that they could trust, and they could have peace of mind. And with my background, and the sport that I came from, and as we just talked about, kind of doing things the right way, when I started engaging with Thorne, I recognized very quickly that this is a company that shared my values, my ethics in terms of doing things the right way and doing things for the right reasons. So after a pretty extensive search of different companies to see who could kind of be the answer for the athletes, and I came to the conclusion that yes, it was Thorne. Shortly after that, they're like, look, we're really making this push into sports, and we would like you to come and help lead our sport initiatives. The company has been in business since 1984, so almost 40 years now. We've been doing this. Thorne has been doing this, and as times change, as people's needs have changed, so has Thorne's offerings, so has Thorne's innovation, and they've just kind of keep up with the times. And it's all really about these kind of personalized solutions. So there's so much talk about a one size fits all, but Thorne is a company that's really focused on one size fits one. So looking at individuals and their individual needs, and kind of personalize these kind of innovative solutions to the issues that they're dealing with, from whether it's a health standpoint or whether it's a performance standpoint or some combination. Because as we've talked, we take the position that in order for you to be an athlete, you first have to be a human.
Mm.
So if we've got to address the health and the wellness side of the equation first before you can even be an athlete. But Thorne has solutions for everybody who aspires to be an athlete, or who's a weekend warrior, or who just wants to feel great every day.
Mm.
So that was the kind of the impetus behind me leaving, a pretty long career with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee to come over, and it was something I was really passionate about, helping athletes, right? And now I've gotten into this position, and I've been blessed to be able to not only be in a position to help athletes, but help people from all walks of life. And Thorne is that organization that really takes that responsibility pretty seriously, because we really care about the people that are putting our products in their body.
100%. And what really amazes me, on top of going back to the foundational elements of its values and its ethics, but the range that Thorne has, right, from the NSF certified, making sure things are sanitary and high quality. In the show notes, I'll share a link for those interested in learning more, so we don't spend another hour going into Thorne's ethos, advantages, and supplements. But I want more people to know about the products that are believed in by the Mayo Clinic doctors and elite athletes. And I know you and I could sing its praises, but one more question about it would be, from your perspective, you brought up the marketing trumping science. Why should more people know about Thorne rather than these over-the-counter supplements?
Well, I think it's one of these things that there's a high percentage of the population that takes supplements now, and I think there's this big misunderstanding about what supplements are and what they are not. And some people will say, I don't take supplements, I just take a multivitamin, or I don't take supplements, I just take something for to help with my iron, or whatever the case may be. And I think the industry in many respects takes advantage of that ignorance, and ignorance, not in a derogatory way, but ignorance meaning they just don't know, they're just not aware. And I think a lot of the companies take advantage of that and put out confusing messages. They with their marketing materials, they put things out there that are misleading, and in some cases just not true. So it was one of these things where when Thorne started, it was, we're going to make the best supplements in the world, and if people want us, they can come and find us. And while that philosophically sounds great, from a business model, it wasn't great. And we had kind of new owners take over the company around 2010, and it was really this kind of push out there to say, yeah, there are some health solutions out there, and we just want to kind of spread the gospel and spread the word that there are good guys out there. There are companies out there that do things the right way. And throughout my entire career, I was all about doing things the right way. And when I came to Thorne and kind of got a peek behind the curtain and saw the way that they were doing things, I'm like, this is unbelievable. And the hope is that we can really start to spread our message and create this kind of brand awareness out there, and let people really know and understand who we are, what we do, and why it should matter to them. And what we do is we do this by the people that we associate with, the ambassadors like yourself that we work with, the organizations that we work with. All these organizations that we work with have that same philosophy in mind. They want something that is healthy for them to take. So we test for, like 800 herbicides, pesticides, pollutants, toxins, heavy metals. So we want products that are healthy for people to take, safe for people to take. Athletes, we do the NSF certification, as you mentioned, so they're guaranteed to be free of banned substances. And it also will tell you what the NSF certification does is whatever is on the label is guaranteed to be in the product. and whatever is not on the label is not in the product. And it's quite an expensive endeavor to do it, and that's why many companies don't do it, because it's highly profitable not to do it, because people don't understand the difference. Some athletes even don't understand the difference, but we put our money where our mouth is, and we want to make sure the products are effective, that they're safe, that they're healthy to take, and we spend a lot of resources behind making sure that happens. And the more people that start to learn and start to experience, the kind of the difference that we can make, and how we can support their health, I think that we'll only kind of continue to grow from here.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the terms that I used earlier was passion, but perhaps should have used something deeper or greater magnitude, because the word probably lifestyle is better, because it's clear to me how you embody it. I think what's really cool is the alignment of values and ethics, and how, you as an individual and Thorn as an organization, it's the same to me, right? You guys you're the same all throughout, all the way down and all the way up. And a question that I have for you is: it's very easy to lose discipline when you're not preparing for a performance or a competition. You talked about going from 2 training days a day to working 8 to 5. And I love how Thorn is not just for the athlete. There's healthy aging, and it continues to go on far beyond athletics. So my question is, have you always cared about your health the way you do? And when do you feel it became a way of life for you?
Yeah, the answer is yes and no. I mean, again, you get into these situations where you don't know what you don't know when you're young. I mean, when I was in my 20s, lifting all of this weight, I felt like I was invincible. You felt like you're going to live forever. So you really don't, at least I didn't. You really don't kind of think about your health, because why? Because I was healthy and strong and fit, and like I said, felt like I could take on the world. But as you kind of get older, and you become a little less active, you realize very quickly that there is so much involved, in this kind of healthy lifestyle. To you want to get to a place where we're not talking about, we're just talking about a higher quality of life, right? So at Thorn, we talk about health span versus lifespan. So
Mm.
the health span means we want you to be as healthy and functional as you can for as long as you're on this earth. I mean, it's great if you want to live to be 100 years old, but if you're living, to be 100 years old, and you can't dress yourself, you can't feed yourself, those sorts of things, that's really not a high quality of life. So what we want to do is increase that health span, so that if you do live to be 100 years old, you're doing it in such a way where you're still active, and you're still you're still having a very high quality of life. So that's why many of our products, outside of the sport line, kind of goes into that healthy aging aspect, to really address those things that kind of fall off or deteriorate as you get older. If we can, really have a focus on, kind of backfilling some of those gaps in health, whether that's around brain, whether that's around your immune system, whether that's around, gut health, sleep, stress, etc. If we can, kind of really help support each individual in whatever area they're struggling in, to increase that health span, that's something that's very important to us, and something that we have been committed to for many years now.
Yeah, outstanding. And I think it's, regardless of age, Thorn has exactly what I've been looking for. And that's why I preach its word. And the final 2 questions I have for you: one is there a question I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, I mean, I think we've kind of covered it all. We've actually covered a lot of ground, from kind of the early childhood to kind of where I'm at now. But certainly it's something you know people should really focus, have a higher focus on their health, because you get one life, right?
Sure.
You get one life, and you want to kind of be positioned to to live the healthiest life that you can. So if it's something that maybe some people haven't thought about or haven't given much thought to, it's really something that I would hope that people would really take a look at. I mean, even back in my 20s, like I said, when I thought I could take on the world, well, when I was 28, I had a cancer diagnosis. I had a melanoma, in of all places, my eye. And that was a little freaky, because the doctors were saying usually if it's found in your eye, it's a secondary spot. So, we've got to go through all these tests and kind of figure things out. But that was really a wake-up call for me that, what, tomorrow is guaranteed to no one. And as invincible as I thought I was, I really wasn't, because disease does not discriminate, age, race, gender, whatever the case may be. So it really kind of caused me to kind of take a step back, realign my priorities, focus on the things that are the most important. And because of that scare that I had back in 1998, I really kind of put my health and well-being, now at the front of my mind, on the front burner there, and making sure that I'm doing everything that I can to support my health and feel as good as I can for as long as I'm blessed to be here.
Well, likewise, and I'm so glad you're well now. The Hall of Fame coach, Lou Holtz, says that things are either growing or it's dying. So is a tree, so is a marriage, so is a person, so is a business, and I think Thorne plays a huge aspect in that. So to wrap up, the overarching themes of this podcast are gratitude and greatness, and partially because I believe that there's a correlation between the two. And from the coaches that you shared and the influences you had, we covered the gratitude side. But from your perspective, what does greatness look like to you? How would you define greatness?
I think the way that I would define greatness, Mark, is for each individual to kind of be who they were meant to be. I mean, I think that one of my favorite sayings is, the two most important days of your life are the day that you're born and the day that you figure out why. And greatness to me means figuring out that why. What is your purpose for being here on this earth, and what is it that you can kind of contribute to make it, to leave it better than you found it. And it's a very simple kind of definition for me, but that's in my eyes what greatness is. Just being the person that you were put on this earth to be, and sharing that gift with others.
Well, I'll tell you, from 5'2", 99 pounds to world champ, I love the growth, and I love the growth of our friendship as well. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and share your story and talk about Thorne and the things that you and I certainly agree upon. So I appreciate it, Wes.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you for having me. And yeah, we look forward to doing this again sometime.